Do you all know how beautiful this hill country is? Is it not? Does anybody here think it's ugly? Rain helps. Praise God for all this rain that's coming in. I think it's because some of our young people's prayers at the 8:30 service is just lifting all that rain up. But wow, this place is so beautiful. I really, honestly, I'm not just saying this to get on your good side. I will not forget the first time I drove into here. We were here for a job interview. Emily and I were here, and we were driving through those hills. We were driving around the curvy road, and it really reminded me of where I was from in Tennessee. The hills of Tennessee and the southern Nashville area. The only difference is the vegetation is a lot different, but it's the same beautiful rolling hills. And I just kept looking around like, okay, God, so this is where that ark ends. I always knew that God's country came up from Tennessee and it landed somewhere. And I finally found one of the endings of it. And it was just so beautiful, to see that hill country. Love that. It makes me wonder if that might be what Caleb was thinking when he saw the hill country of Israel. It's probably not as beautiful as ours, right? But I bet it's pretty. And he saw it. And do you remember the story? The Israelites are going through the promised land. Or they're not going through the promised land. They're trying to get to the promised land. They're going through the wilderness. And they're almost to the promised land. So as they get close to the promised land, God says, okay, I want you to pick out 12 spies, one from each tribe. And I want you to send them into the promised land to scout out the land. See about the produce. See if I'm telling the truth about this land of milk and honey. See about the people that are there. And so they pick 12 people. They go into the promised land. They see everything out. Caleb is super impressed with the hill country. He sees the hill country of the promised land. And I don't know if it was in his heart in that moment, but you could just tell that he thought this was a wonderful place. And he wanted God to make this his. And so the 12 spies come back home. They give their report to the rest of the Israelites, and 10 of the spies are like, yes, it's a land flowing of milk and honey. We have some produce here. We've got some samples that are being grown there. There's a lot of good stuff about this place. God is not lying about that, but the people are giants. The people make us seem like grasshoppers around them. We cannot take this. We cannot defeat these people. And Caleb and Joshua, they stand up and go, whoa, 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 whoa. If God is for us, who can be against us? Right? We can do this. The battle is not ours. The battle is the Lord's. Give us this hill country. We will take it. But the word was already spreading throughout the camps of Israel, and the doubt was seeking in, and it made God so upset at the lack of the faith, which you can understand after everything that he had brought them through. After providing a miracle of food every day, parting a sea, everything that he had done for them, they did not have the faith to go forward. And so God says, you know what? We're going to let this generation pass before you go into the promised land. Only Joshua and Caleb are going to be able to go in, because those are the two that had the faith to face what was in front of them. And so God makes this promise to Caleb. God says, you know what? Because of your faith, I will give you this hill country. This hill country will be yours. I will give you the land that your feet have already walked on. And so the 40 years pass. They finally get to the promised land. And Caleb says, Joshua, do you remember what God promised? Do you remember that when we got back here, this land that we spent time on, this place that was for a short time our home, this beautiful hill country, do you remember that God said that he would give that to me? And Joshua says, yes. And so Caleb gets the land under his feet, gets the beautiful hill country. I don't know if it was like this for you when you were growing up and coming to church, but this is the way it was for me. I would go to church and all I would hear about were the great missionaries of the church. And they were doing some great things. They would have like special missionary Sundays where the missionaries would come in and they would put pictures and slides up of all the things that they were doing. They would put an offering plate around to get some more money for the mission. And if you were a really good Christian, they would look at you and say, hey, you need to go to one of these places for Jesus. You need to go. We have to spread this gospel all over the world. And I was always a little nervous about that because I liked Tennessee. I liked the hill country of Tennessee. But God said, Pastor Tim, you got to go into the mission field too if you're going to be a pastor. And so God sent me to Oklahoma, of all places. Learned a lot there. But then God took it even further and said, you know what? I want you to be an international missionary. Yeah, and so God sent me to Michigan. Oh, that was wild. I was like, okay, God, I'll go there. I'll go to Michigan. Why not? Get out of there as soon as you allow me, but I'll go up there. But it's interesting. You know, we celebrate Paul's missionary journeys. We love them. We look in the back of the Bible, and there's the little maps with the different color lines so we can follow the paths for 1 and 2 and 3. And we celebrate Peter's missionary journeys, and we love how all of the apostles went out to different places, to Turkey, to Syria, to India, did amazing things for God, and we celebrate that. That is awesome. Missionaries are wonderful. We love them. We celebrate them. But it's interesting that if you read the New Testament, most of the people who met Jesus, where did they go after they met Jesus? They went home. They went home. It's interesting to me. The woman at the well, she's been looking for the Messiah. She's got a heart that's open for the Messiah. She's willing to see what's in front of her. So Jesus introduces himself to her. She meets Jesus, has this amazing experience. But what does she do? She goes back home. She goes back to the place that had been so bad to her in a lot of ways. She goes back to the place where people gossiped about her and pointed at her. But she goes with the message of Jesus and she spreads the good news at home. At home. I love the story of Legion, just because that's a cool name. You know, and this guy is tormented by demons. I mean, he's in a horrible, horrible place. I mean, if you could only imagine the life he was living. Everybody knew about Legion. Everybody knew what he was suffering from. Stay away from him, how bad he is. And so Jesus meets up with Legion, and Jesus heals him. And can you imagine everything that Legion has been through? He's so excited. If you remember the story, there's little details of the story that are interesting to me. The disciples are about to get on the boat and leave with Jesus to go to the next mission place, right? Jesus is about to take them to the next place. And Legion is ready to get on the boat with them. Legion is so excited about Jesus. He wants to take his spot on the boat and follow Jesus. And the other disciples are like, I don't know if we have enough room. I'm sitting here. I'm sitting here. Peter's like, I take a lot of space. I'm sorry, Legion. And so finally, Jesus comes over to Legion and puts his arm around Legion and says, Legion, this isn't for you. You have no idea what these guys are going to have to suffer in the future in their travels and all the places that they're going to have to go. Legion, I want you to go home. Home. Home? But Jesus, home is where everybody makes fun of me. Home is where everybody knows me because of my past. Home is where they label me based on my afflictions. Wouldn't I be more of a help to you in the boat? No. You would be more of a help to me at home. To some of us, the biggest difference that we can make for Jesus is in our own home. our own home. Why is that? Why is it that we can go home and people will listen? You know, as I've gone to different churches, the first 2 churches I pastored, I spent the first Sunday giving my personal testimony. I would stand up and just kind of tell my story. This is where God found me. This is where I had turned away. I hadn't been to church for years. This is where God called me back. This is how far I've come. This is how my life has changed. And, you know, it went over well, but it wasn't amazing or anything like that. It's not like people were sitting in the pews like, wow, Pastor Tim, that's just an incredible story. Thank you for sharing. No. But when I went back to Franklin, Tennessee, and I ran into people that knew me, Tim Palmer, BC, Tim Palmer before Christ, knew the man that I used to be, started talking to me. They were the ones that were like, what has happened to you? I met Jesus. What? You met Jesus? What do you mean you met Jesus? You? Yeah, I met Jesus. He's awesome. Let me tell you. Home. Home is where our testimony speaks the loudest. Home, the power of a changed life. Me and my mom used to argue a little bit, you know. I'm not a saint, guys. You know, and she was awesome, you know, but she was strong-willed. You know what I mean? You ever met a woman like that? She was a great woman. She's the only reason I'm here today, right? Is because of this great woman. But she had opinions about everything. And so sometimes I come home from college or come home from somewhere, and she would let me know those opinions, and I would let her know what I thought of those opinions. And before you know it, my dad was like, can y'all just get along? Gail, can you go over here for just a minute and calm down? Tim, will you please stop aggravating your mother? You know, it was constant. And so I came up to my parents and said, hey, I'm going to seminary. And they were like, okay, that's fine. Wonderful. I hope it works out. I came home from seminary. I would tell them some great theological things that I've learned. Okay, great. We're so glad that you learned those things. Didn't really make that big of a difference. Finally, one day I come home and we're sitting outside, and my mom gives me one of those really strong motherly opinions. And I smiled at her, walked up to her, hugged her, and said, thank you for sharing that. Went back and sat down. My dad is sitting there like, my mom, smiling, whistling, I think, goes into the kitchen to work on something. And my dad is still like, he looks at me and says, Tim, what happened? And I said, do you think Jesus wants me to argue with her? There's nothing more powerful than the power of a changed life. We like to argue about theology. I think that, you know, it's interesting. Peter and John heal the lame man at the gate, and there's this big brouhaha about it. You know, everybody's yelling at each other. I don't know if you have the power to heal this person. In whose name have you done this thing? And they're getting all theological with everything right there. And all the time that they're arguing about this stuff, the lame man is standing right here. You can't argue with that. You can argue the theology all you want, but how are you going to argue with a life that was changed? Everybody hears about Legion. I mentioned him. All the town people come running because they heard this weird story about the man that had all of these demons, and they find Legion, and he's just sitting there at the feet of Jesus, listening to Jesus. And Jesus is giving all of the theology, all of the teachings that have gone in one ear and out of the other of all of these skeptical people. But they're all sitting there staring at legion because you can't argue with a changed life. How do you look at legion and go, I don't know. I don't know about this Jesus. You can't argue with what's right in front of you, the power of a changed life. That's why you can do the best work at home. If Jesus has changed your life, you can go home to your kids, to your parents, to your neighbors, and you can make the greatest impact. But we don't want to do that. Nobody got mad at me for saying this at the 8:30 service. I thought they were, though. I was like, I don't know if any of y'all are going to agree with this. I probably shouldn't say this. Everybody's holding their breath right now. But sometimes I get so tired of how whiny Christians have become. I know it's just me. But are you guys not tired of hearing they're not letting our kids pray in school anymore? Nobody likes us anymore. They're trying to get rid of God. They've taken God out of the schools. You guys serve a different God than I do. Because the God that parted the Red Sea is not going to be thrown out of some school. Not as long as His people are walking up and down the hallways. They're not letting our kids pray. We're taking the 10 Commandments down from the courthouses. What are they doing in Washington, D.C.? What are they doing in Chicago? What is Hollywood doing these days? Oh my gosh, they don't like us. We're so persecuted. And do you know what I want to say back to those people? First of all, I do want to say this, as I told 8:30. Pastor Tim is pro praying in school, okay? You don't take this the wrong way, because if I don't say that, someone will walk out of here going, Pastor Tim says he's not. No, I want that to happen. But this is what I want to say back to those people. The church was born in a land that was against them. Every time the church has exponentially grown, it has been in a land that was against them. Every time the church has been fiercely persecuted, the church has flourished. It is where the church that has been the most comfortable is where the church has declined. It is not because people are out to get the church. Our problem is we don't want to do the ministry in the home. We want other people to do the ministry for us. We want to be able to send our kids to school where they will pray with our children. We don't want to sit around the dinner table and pray with our own children. We want to pay elected officials to pray with them. We want the 10 Commandments in the courthouse because we don't have them in our own houses. We don't teach them and have our own kids memorize them, but we sure would like it if there was a picture up in a public building. Our biggest mission field is in the home. Do not expect the public, the school system, to disciple your children for you. Do not expect the church to disciple your children for you. We get them 1 day a week. You have them 6. You read the Bible. You pray with them. You tell them the power of your changed life to them. Because those are the things that when they sit down with the atheist professor at the university, Those are the things that are going to be there, not the 1 hour a week they spent in Sunday school. Why did God's people survive Babylon? Why did God's people survive the 90 AD persecution in the Roman Empire when Christians were dying? How did we ever survive that? How has the church been able to survive in places where there's no such thing as public worship, and there's no such thing as VBS, and there's no such thing as Sunday school class? How has the church thrived in those places? Do you want to know the truth? Because dads treated their children like their ultimate mission. They passed their faith down to their kids in a way that the world could never take it away from them. Now, I don't say that to convict everyone, because trust me, I'm convicting myself more than any of you. So don't think that I'm beating you up, because if I'm beating you up, I should have 2 black eyes right now myself. The reason I say this is not to beat you up. The reason I say this is to remind you of the ultimate responsibility. Stop spending so much time worrying about what's happening in Washington, D.C. Stop spending so much time worrying about the court system. And focus on the land beneath your feet, your hill country. God, give me this hill country. God, give me this classroom. God, give me this office. Give me this athletic team. Give me this cul-de-sac that I live on. Give me this ranch. God, give me this hill country, the land beneath my feet, the place that I've already walked. God, you've promised that to me. You've promised that even though I want to change the world, if I can just change my ranch, if I can just change my family, if I can just help my friend circle, I can do more than most people. Give me the land beneath my own feet. Give me this hill country. Give me this hill country. That first time that I drove into this place, I couldn't believe how beautiful it was. I really honestly was surprised. Like, not because I heard bad things about it or anything. I just never even really thought about it, to be honest with you. And I always had looked at Texas as a really flat place, and just, you can see miles. The tumbleweeds will hit you if you don't get out of the way, that kind of thing. And so I drove through here, and it was breathtaking to see the hills. And I think we take it for granted sometimes of just how beautiful it is. And I don't know what I was praying as I drove, but it came out to something like, God, give me this hill country. I'm probably not the guy, God, that you want to send to Africa or Asia. Probably not the guy that you want to put on tour or something like that. But this hill country, this place, God, promise me that you'll give me this land, this hill country. And so dads, grandfathers, teachers, uncles, the message for you today, think about the land under your feet. Think about the ways that no matter what happens in the rest of the country, no matter what happens in the rest of the world, this hill country, this Bandera County, this Bandera, we're going to make sure knows Jesus. And it all starts at home.